how much potential there is if we just allow students to unlock it, I'll show you this next video.
So I actually dropped out of high school twice, both during my freshman year. And when I eventually came back, I was put in sort of lower level math and science classes because I was so behind. Then I discovered Khan Academy, and I was able to skip 2 years worth of math just through using the site. And I came into school, I took the exam with students who had been enrolled in the class all year, and I was actually able to get the highest or the second highest scores in the class. So for me, Khan Academy really changed the trajectory of my entire life, because without it, I don't think I ever really would have been inspired to learn and to love math and to love science. I ended up graduating as a valedictorian and going on to Princeton, where I'm now a computer science major, and I'm absolutely passionate about learning about computers, about math, about science. And without Khan Academy, I don't think that these things would really matter to me the way that they do today.
There's an interesting epilogue there when we said, we have internships, and he applied it, and Charlie's actually been one of the top out-of-college grads that we've ever hired, so in a very strange way, we're helping to alleviate our own labor issues. So. But as I said, it really is all about the classroom. I mean, increasingly we're realizing for our mission, for us to really do it, it has to be done in context, primarily in context, with districts and with teachers, because that's the way. It's great that if a Charlie is able to find it on his own, and clearly even if he was having trouble with school initially or didn't believe in himself, there's something special about a Charlie Marsh where he was able to kind of have the type of growth mindset to be willing to engage. Nadia, for example, had already given up on herself. And if we really want to reach all of the students, especially those that need it the most, it needs to be in partnership with all of y'all, because you are reaching all of the students, and y'all are the people who are really the front lines with these students. And so we've been doing a bunch with districts, and I'm happy to talk more about it in the Q&A. What I'm about to show is some of the energy level that we've been seeing when we did this learning challenge in back to school. We did the last couple of back to schools. It's called LearnStorm, where it encourages teachers to use Khan Academy both in a mastery learning, and they can do assignments where students can get immediate feedback and teachers can see where they are. But there's shared goals around it. So even if students are learning on their individual pace, there can be shared goals around learning for an entire classroom. But what you're going to see is videos of kids in classrooms as they're about to see whether their classroom reached their collective learning targets on Khan Academy. That's always a fun pick-me-up. Now, as part of our mission, we had the College Board reach out to us a couple of years ago and say, hey, look, we like what y'all are doing around personalized education, and we have a problem at the College Board, which is there's a perception and maybe a reality that test preparation is not equal, that middle class, upper middle class kids have access to paid tutors, these test prep companies, and it unlevels the playing field. We want to work with y'all, but the reason why we want to work with Khan Academy is that Khan Academy, even though this will be nominally in preparation for the test, but we think it's about preparing students for college as will be measured by the test. So on Khan Academy, if a student doesn't understand a certain type of equation, we don't say, well, this is how you guess. We say, why don't you fill in those Swiss cheese gaps that you have accumulated? And so this video is a video that came out when we had first launched this partnership with the SAT.
Today is the last day students around the country will take the SAT in its current form. That's because starting in March, a new test with lots of changes will be there for high schoolers. Here's NBC's Ann Thompson.
I wanted to start my own business specializing in robotics.
I think I'd like to be a chemist.
The first hurdle to achieving those dreams, the SAT. Today is the last day students will be offered the test in its current form. The new SAT promises to be quite different. All high school students like Amelia Teneo and Minkailu Kanute now also have access to free online tutoring from the Khan Academy.
The software itself acts like a tutor. It shows you, hey, you should probably work on this.
Complete with points and badges.
And once you get to like the more advanced stuff, you get like really cool badges.
Sounds like a video game.
Yeah, exactly.
What is this question asking?
Students have been practicing for months with sample tests meant to mirror the new SAT exam beginning in March.
And how have you done on the mock SAT?
I have done well. By the time that I went to Mach 2, I boosted my scores by 200 points.
Building confidence along the way to achieve new possibilities in the future. For today, Ann Thompson, NBC News, The Bronx.
Now, one of the exciting things about this partnership is it allows us to actually run efficacy studies in a way that we hadn't traditionally been able to do it. So a lot of y'all might be familiar, the PSAT, which I believe PSAT and NMSQT, 70% of students in America take. When most of us took it, it was just kind of this random test you took in 10th or 11th grade. If you happen to do well on it, you might get into some scholarship programs, or some colleges might start sending you some brochures, but that was about it. What's exciting is that now, when students take the PSAT and they get their scores, and I've talked to several of y'all before the session, and it sounds like many districts are already doing this, they can sync those PSAT scores with Khan Academy. And what that does is the PSAT now acts as a diagnostic for personalized practice. So then the Khan Academy software, and all of this is this is all free, not for profit, always will be, is that it can look at, it's not just math, it's on the humanities, reading, writing, and math sections. It will be able to see what students' weak points are and then what's optimal for them to work on. And once again, it's not about gaming the test, it's about actually learning the material so that students will be more prepared for college as measured by something like the SAT. And what's been neat is we've been able to see these hundreds of thousands of students link their accounts and then eventually take the SAT. And we've been able to do efficacy studies on a scale that actually would have seemed science fiction only a few years ago. And we're seeing that 20 hours of practice between the PSAT and the SAT, so roughly 18 months, results in twice the expected gain, or is associated with twice the expected gain. So typically students gain about 50 to 60 points over that 18 months, and we're seeing that they're gaining about 120 points, which is actually a pretty substantial amount. And it seems like it keeps going. And when we're looking at the students, there are some that we are identifying that are going 200, 300 points. And when we actually seek and meet some of those students, we want to ensure that they're actually learning the material. And it seems like they actually are, and we are also starting to see how they perform in college, and it seems like it's becoming more and more indicative. So a big part for us is, let's make sure this is effective. We're running studies in school districts around the country. There's some slides here, when students do their work. This is a large study in Idaho. They saw 80% more than expected gain, where they did a majority of the skills, the standards on Khan Academy. We're seeing as little as 30 minutes or more per week is resulting in 20 to 30% greater than expected growth. So more and more we're talking to teachers and district officials and principals on how we can work together to support them to be able to have at least that level of personalized learning to get that growth. This is just some of the, as I mentioned, Khan Academy is done in conjunction with a lot of other folks, and it wouldn't be possible without them. It's much more than me. We're hundreds of people, over 200 people. There's thousands of people around the world who've helped translate content, and obviously there's thousands of teachers that we work with. We have over 500 teacher ambassadors who are helping us spread our work, because obviously we're still a very small organization to be able to be able to support y'all in the way that we want to. So everything I've talked about so far has been the world that most of us live in, the English-speaking world, the developed world. But some of y'all might be wondering, what about the rest of the planet? With a mission like a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere, it might be more relevant there. And all of these are pretty neat stories, and these are all pictures that were taken by other not-for-profits, other volunteers that are really doing the heavy lifting. They're going into villages, they're setting up computer labs, and they're all pretty cool, but probably the most exciting one is the one there in the top right. I used to give talks like this and say, who knows, maybe one day it will be used in Mongolia, just imagining the furthest place on the planet. And then, a few years ago, I got a letter from that young girl in the top right. Her name's Zaya, and she was from Mongolia. And she wrote an email, but she had a link to kind of a video testimonial, so I immediately watched the video testimonial, and it was very similar to Charlie's. She says, hey, I'm using Khan Academy, and it's filling in these gaps that I have, and it's allowing me to learn at my own pace. I'm really enjoying it. I immediately assumed that she must be middle class or upper middle class. Her English was quite good. She clearly had access to the internet. But then I read the text of her email more closely, and it turns out that there was a group of engineers from Cisco Systems who were using their vacation time to go to Mongolia and set up computer labs in orphanages. And what you see in the top right there, those are the orphan girls using Khan Academy, and Zaya was one of those orphans. And what was especially powerful about that is that Zaya, once she graduated from high school, has now become one of the top contributors to Khan Academy in the Mongolian language. So once again, it just shows you how much potential there's in the world if we can just if we can work together to unlock it a little bit. And probably even a more incredible story that came out in the last year and a half. This young woman, Sultana, about 6-7 years ago, Taliban takes over her town in Afghanistan, forbids all of the young girls from going to school, and really threatens them with acid attacks, really horrible stuff. Sultana has to stay home, she's doing chores 10 hours a day. Her brother-in-law sees that she really wants to learn and gets her a laptop. And so she uses that, she starts that plus internet, she starts learning English off of the internet, which sounds a little scary, but it actually seems to work for her. And she asked family members any reading material that they can get her in English, because she wants to learn English so that she can learn more. And a family member got her a Time magazine in English, and it just happened to have an article about Khan Academy in it. And so Sultana says I think she was 13 years old when this happened. She's like, this is what I need. So between her 10 hours, it was literally 10 hours of chores, she would get on and learn as much as she could. And she got from, even though she was in middle school, she was 13 years old, she was really probably at a 3rd or 4th grade level in her reading and her mathematics. But she remediated it all, and then she got through middle school. She eventually started learning physics, chemistry, biology, calculus, statistics, and she decides that she wants to become a physicist and be a researcher in the United States. And so what she does is she decides she needs to take the SAT to do that. It's not offered in Afghanistan. She smuggles herself on a 30-hour, incredibly dangerous border to Pakistan to take the SAT. So any of y'all with teenagers who are complaining about showing up on a Saturday morning, tell them the story. And she does shockingly well for someone who's just learned English on her own and really just learned by herself with very little supports. And so so she's trying to get into the U.S. She's having trouble getting a visa. There's someone that she was pen pals with who contacts me based in Iowa. And that's when I found, I was like, this is an incredible story. This girl needs more support. I start emailing people. Luckily, Nicholas Kristof from the New York Times finds out somehow. And he writes this op-ed, Meet Sultana, the Taliban's worst fear. And that op-ed is actually what allowed Sultana to get asylum in the United States. And as we speak, she's in the United States, and she's already collaborating with a Nobel Prize physicist at MIT. Wow. And so you can imagine, we have big ideas of what we can collaborate with all of y'all to do in your classrooms, but there's also a piece of Khan Academy which is just access to the Sultanas and the Zayas of the world who aren't lucky enough to have incredible educators like y'all in their lives. And so you can imagine these translation efforts are a big deal for us, and it's not just the videos, it's the practice content, the teacher dashboards, et cetera, et cetera. But just to get a feel for what at least the videos look like in other languages, I'll show you this next montage.
Me comí 2 cuartos de pizza.
L'hypoténuse commune, ok.
C 13 15
और मैं इस हाथ से ब्लॉक को धकेलने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ इस डायरेक्शन में
توجد قطعتين من معدن النحاس والزنك.
P R בצוואר 2 סנטר.
הגיעה הנקודה שבה שעות הסיום של הזווית חותכת את מעגל היחידה.
O 16 bölü 16 1'e eşittir.
E muitas outras coisas importantes.
Isaiah from Mongolia, your videos are so interesting and funny. Make more lessons.
I watch that whenever I get lazy. So here are just more pictures of Khan Academy being used around the planet. And whenever we see things like this and we get letters from folks, it just reminds me, and I remind all of the stakeholders, and once again, I hope that we all find ourselves in this mission together. Frankly, you're already in this mission because y'all are reaching the students who need it the most. You all are already helping provide a free world-class education, in fact, in a much more tangible way than we are, and we're here to support y'all in that. But it makes you realize that we are at a pretty exciting point in history, especially when it comes to education. Because I suspect, if you were to go, I'll give you a little thought experiment to realize the opportunity that all of us here have as educators. If we were to go back in time about 400 years to Western Europe, which even then was one of the more literate parts of the world, you would have seen that about 15% of the population knew how to read, about 20% of men and about 10% of women. And I suspect that if you went to someone who was literate, say a member of the clergy, and you said, what percentage of the population do you think is even capable of reading? If you had a perfect education system, they would have said, well, you know, right now it's about 15%, but maybe with a great education system, a perfect one, maybe 50% could read, maybe 60%, you know, I'm being a little ambitious. But if we fast forward today, we know that that would have been a wildly pessimistic prediction, that pretty close to 100% of the population is capable of reading. And the reason why we got to this point in the world is that a pretty incredible thing happened in the 18th and 19th centuries. You had free public education, which y'all are a big part of, and it's transformational for society. It's no coincidence that the first societies that had free public education were the first societies to develop. We're talking about the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Japan. Those were the first truly developed countries, and they were the first ones to have truly free public education. But now, if I were to ask y'all a similar question, what percentage of the population, what percentage of your students do you think are capable of writing the next great novel, or starting the next tech company, or pushing the frontiers of physics research, or finding the cure for cancer? I think, you know, a lot of us would say, well, you know, right now that's maybe 1%, maybe 5%, if we really help them a lot, maybe 10, 15%. But what if that prediction is based on the similar blinders that the clergy member had from 400 years ago? It's just based on our experience, where as we all moved through the system, you know, students accumulating a gap in decimals, another gap in reading comprehension, another gap in negative exponents, and then they get to that algebra class. And algebra is one of those classes where a lot of students hit a wall, not because they're not bright, not because algebra is fundamentally difficult, it's because they saw an equation that has a zero power in there and a fraction and a decimal, and that there's no way for them to remediate. And even though the teacher oftentimes recognizes that, it's hard for them to meet the needs of that individual student. And what if, instead, you were able to reach the needs of that individual student when they're in that genetics class and they need to remediate the probability, or that calculus class, or that humanities class, and they can rebuild their foundations in their reading comprehension? Maybe we're all being wildly pessimistic. Maybe it's like reading, that pretty close, 50, 60, 70, or maybe close to 100% of the population is capable of doing the things that right now we think that only 1 to 5% are capable of. And what's exciting is if we get there, and it's not going to happen overnight, and I literally think it's going to be a group effort from all of us in the room and many people beyond this room, it could be transformational for society. Obviously, there's an equity piece to this, and I think this is why all of y'all, or the great majority of y'all, are public educators, because you believe in the power of what happens in public education. And, you know, as I said, point anyone to the history, a society that has invested in public education is going to become a great society. And what's amazing is now we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know, that's not just feel-good language. You can empirically show it. And now we have an opportunity to take it to another level, where just as we had a transformation 200-300 years ago, where everyone was allowed to have an education. Now we can get to a world, I believe, once again, it's not going to happen overnight, and there's a lot of hard work that we're going to collectively have to do, where everyone can get closer to a personalized education. The things that the princes and the nobility got 500 years ago, they got mastery learning. It was just really because they had 5 tutors each. Today in this world, it's hard to do it without the help of technology. But I think we can get there. And also, I think selfishly for all of us, it's just going to be a more exciting time to live, because all of our students, they are going to find the cure for that disease that one of our family members is unlikely to have. They're going to write that novel that's going to bring us joy later in our lives. They're going to figure out ways for us to transport faster and solve the world's problems. And so all I have to say is that, you know, it's going to be a very exciting time if collectively we can take this thing that we already are working on called education and make a really personalized, mastery-based education like clean drinking water or basic shelter, and just a fundamental human right. Thank you.